رب العالمين حمدا يوافي نعمه ويكافي مزيدا وصلى الله وسلم على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه والتابعين لهم بإحسان إلى يوم الدين وعلينا معهم وفيهم برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين. We intend learning and teaching, remembering and reminding, giving and receiving benefit and gain, encouraging adherence to Allah's book and the sunnah of His Messenger sallallahu alaihi wa sallam, inviting to guidance and leading to goodness, seeking therein Allah's countenance, pleasure, nearness and reward, transcendent and exalted is He. We intend what our authors, Sheikhs, and the pious have intended and what Allah knows of virtuous intentions, and we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to accept. Bismillahi ma sha Allah la quwwata illa billah. Allahumma salli wa sallam ala Sayyidina Muhammad Nurik As-Sari. Naam. So we are continuing this lesson in this blessed treatise, Matan Abi Shuja', and we began najasa, or filth, last week, and the class, or not last week, in our last class, which was 3 weeks ago. And that class was immediately prior to a marriage, and there was a number of the general community who were here, and being that they gathered for a marriage, to go into the nitty-gritty of najasa wasn't really in good taste. So we're going to come back over what we covered, insha'Allah ta'ala. He said, فَصْلٌ وَكُلُّ مَائِعٍ خَرَجَ مِنَ السَّبِيلَيْنِ نَجِسٌ إِلَّا الْمَنِيء. So he said, chapter, and this is types of filth, all liquids that exit from the genitals are filth. And by genitals, he means the front and rear private parts are filth, except for sexual fluid, mani. Okay, so everything that comes out of the sabilain is najis, except for al-mani. Why is mani not najis? Difference of opinion among the scholars. And that applies to the fluid that is emitted from all animals except dogs and pigs. Everything about them is najis. And that was due to the hadith of Muslim that Sayyidatuna Aisha mentioned that she would scrape mani from the garment of Allah's Messenger and he would pray in it without washing. So in the Shaffi school, it's pure. And another proof that they say is that it is the origin of the human being. And the human being is pure. So just as he's pure, the source from which he's or she is made is also pure. As for the purity of the human being, that comes from the saying of Allah, وَلَقَدْ كَرَّمْنَا بَنِي Adam. We have indeed ennobled the children of Adam, and part of that ennoblement or ennobling is our purity, whether alive or dead. So when we deal with unslaughtered dead things, we'll see that among those that are pure are humans. But humans are pure in any case, and due to Allah's ennoblement of the human being. And again, that's an area of scholastic difference. Okay, so then that brings us to the question that we didn't want to bring up last week, due to those present. What is mani then? Al-mani is, he's translated as sexual fluid. It applies to both the man and the woman. And mani has 3 distinct qualities. If one of them is present, we rule it as mani. And if none of them is present, we don't. So the first is when it is wet, it smells like bread dough, and when it is dry, it smells like egg whites. The first is the odor, like bread dough or egg whites, whether it's wet or dry. The second is that it is emitted in bursts. And the third is that pleasure accompanies its emission. So if one of those exists, it's mani, and that's the ruling we give it, and it makes wudu obligatory, though it's pure. And if none of them is present, it's not mani. And it's known by those three qualities. Now there's another, excluding urine, there is another, two other fluids that are emitted. One of them is called medhi, and medhi is basically like what they would call in English prostate fluid, and that is what that's the fluid that's emitted when the person is aroused. However, it's not semen, for instance. And then the third fluid is called wadi. And wadi is a thick white fluid that exits after someone urinates, or if they're sick, or if they've carried something that's too heavy. And the second and the third, medhi and wadi, they're impure and they break wudu, though they do not necessitate ghusl. Many is basically the opposite. It's pure, and it necessitates ghusl. And actually, strangely enough, mani doesn't necessitate wudu. Though, can you do anything with that wudu? No. Why? Because that's one of the wonders of the fuqaha. Tayyib. So, that's a little bit about types of filth and mani, as opposed to those others. Now, he goes on talking about removal of filth, and he's going to come back to various types of filth. He says, oh no, this is part of the same section. Yes, please.
So if those other two come out, you have to wash them off, like instant and then make wudu?
Yes.
You can't just let it dry.
Right, no, they have to be washed, and anything that they get on has to be washed, and then one has to make ablution. Yep. They're impure, so they have to be washed away, like any other filth, and one has to perform ablution from them. So, okay. But many is pure. Yeah. Yep. Though there's a difference of opinion, so it's better to wash it. And typically that will be accompanied by other impure substances, so typically, practically speaking, it's going to be washed anyway. Tayyib, washing all urine and excrement is obligatory, except for urine from a male infant who has not eaten food, which may be purified by sprinkling the affected area with water. We discussed that last week, but we didn't go into washing in detail. So we're going to go into detail here about washing. And basically, this sentence comprises most of what we need to benefit from this chapter. Washing all urine and excrement is obligatory. You could expand that to say washing all non-excused filth is obligatory, right? So in the Shafi'i school, the only way to remove najasa is by washing. We defined najasa last week, but I'll define it again. So washing all non-excused filth is obligatory. By filth, parentheses Arabic najasa, we mean any filth that prevents the validity of prayer when there's no dispensation. So some filths, if there's a dispensation, they don't prevent the validity of prayer, but where they're not a dispensation, they would prevent the validity of prayer. So any filth that prevents the validity of prayer when there's not a dispensation is what we mean when we say in technical terms filth or najasa. That's one way of defining it. Another way of defining it that they tend to prefer in this chapter is just by listing the types of filth, because they're not many. And that's a more accurate way then to define it, or a more beneficial way to define it. And he's going to come back to that, and we'll add some to his list. But basically, that's what we mean is filth that you got to get rid of it in order to pray. So then how do you get rid of it? You get rid of it by washing. What does washing mean? We covered this in the section on wudu and ghusl. Washing in the Shafi'i school means water running over the thing, ghusl. as opposed to masah, which is wiping the thing with moisture. Right? So washing here means washing as opposed to wiping, which is of concern because many surfaces that we may typically clean, we don't wash. Like a bathroom floor is typically mopped in this society, and that's not technically washing. There's some detail there because surfaces, floors that aren't typically pure, they might be excused to walk over. But in any case, washing here means washing. Water pouring onto the thing, or it coming up from the base of a washing machine, for instance, and covering what is being washed. So that's an issue. Things may, all of any filth must be washed. Okay, and that applies to these two examples. And those are just examples, but anything, blood, something that a dog's licked, something that has touched unslaughtered dead, whatever. Yes?
What if some of the odorous fluid is
We'll deal with that, inshallah ta'ala. So washing, things must be washed. And then something we should understand is that filth, from one point of view, can be divided into two categories. Perceptible filth and imperceptible filth. Imperceptible filth means that you don't perceive any of its qualities. Perceptible filth is that which you perceive its taste, color, or smell. And obviously nobody's saying to taste najasa, but for instance, if someone was making wudu, and that's one of the reasons they say that rinsing the mouth is legislated, so you could, and also rinsing the nose, so you can know the qualities of the water that you're using. So filth that's perceptible, and that's what you perceive, its taste, color, or smell, that must be removed by washing.